Welcome.
Hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live webinar on frustration to delight, building better bot experiences. This is part 3. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Jeff, my partner in crime here.
Thanks for having me. Love these conversations.
This will be fun. Today, we're going to actually share some examples of chatbots and show what amazing grounds have been covered so far.
Yeah, real world. That always takes it out of the slide and into reality. So
I mean, it's mind blowing if you think about a year ago.
I can't just my feed alone every day. It's like, oh, here's a new model, here's a new benchmark, here's a new I've never seen such widespread interest in technology as this.
Oh, it's amazing. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live webinar, part 3 of a series. Thanks again, Jeff, for joining from Canada.
Thanks for having me. A little brisk out there today, but it's sun's shining, so it's nice.
Right. It's 11 o'clock. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sally Hurley, and I'm joined here with Jeff Cramp, our Chief AI Officer at VIP Desk.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining us today. This is part 3 of a series that we've been doing on LinkedIn. Our webinar today is going to be about moving from frustration to delight and building better bot experiences. More or less, we're going to cover the good, bad, and the ugly in some real scenarios and use cases of the actual chatbot. So this is going to be a fun one. Just in terms of background, real quick, we are VIP Desk. We provide and have had a long history of providing outsourced customer service. We have worked with luxury brands, tech brands, associations, you name it. And today we offer staffing services, but also augmented with AI for customer service. So we've been doing this since last summer. We're learning a lot and a rapid pace, just like everyone. And so we're really happy to be able to share it. So thank you, Jeff. You're the real guru here on this webinar.
Well, I could talk about this stuff for days. This is great.
So we're going to jump into it. Everybody knows that I think AI is on a rapid growth trajectory. For customer service specifically, just to compare what it looked like for a traditional chatbot, the market going from about almost $1 billion to less than $2 billion by 2030. However, conversational AI, that market looks like it's going to be going from about 10 billion to almost 50 billion by 2030. So it is astronomical growth, and that tells all of us, there's all kinds of studies that will share where they came from, but that 77% of businesses are looking to implement generative AI as it relates to customer service. That's just this part of the business. So that's pretty phenomenal. And so we're going to get into it and share some of our experiences. Okay, Jeff, let's talk about common misconceptions about generative AI chatbots.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So chatbots are robotic and unhelpful.
So that is traditionally true, but when you get into this generative and conversational AI, that goes out the window because you can give these things a personality. They can give tailored responses. You can really shape that conversation to happen, but it's anything but robotic, and you'll see that soon here.
Okay. Well, what about the misconception that AI lacks empathy?
That is unbelievably untrue. I can't get over some of the conversations I've seen where like you wouldn't have even thought to script some of these the way that they are, but like just the way it sounds, like you could be very easily confused that this is a person. It is incredibly empathetic when it needs to be.
Although I've heard you say it's often too nice. So
Yeah, that is true. There are some AIs out there for sure that are a little too agreeable.
too agreeable. We're just not used to that.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is bots trap you in endless loops.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this in customer service forever, even back in when people were heavily doing IVRs and sort of you go through this loop and then you have to go back in the end, and this is again about the traditional flow where you have to map out that journey, and then eventually you get to the point where those lines kind of just keep going around and around, and a lot of times too it's from not wanting to escalate to an agent, and I think you're never going to give customer service and give great customer service if you don't give that option. Just recognize where it's needed and where it's not. Like if you give a good generative AI chatbot that can have conversation with people and help them, you don't need to sort of trap people in this loop and then let them escape. If they need someone because their problem is unique, let them.
Yeah. So don't blame the bot.
Don't blame the bot.
Okay. The next misconception, AI creates PR disasters.
Yeah, so I think everyone saw a lot of the articles in the early days where people would launch a bot and no guardrails, nothing, just because it sounded so great. And then yeah, there was some interesting conversations out there. But these platforms have really matured as well as people's knowledge to how to put those guardrails in place. And you can really refrain it where it's okay that it can say, I don't know. And so just for anyone who has not really played around with generative AI and these conversational bots, if you don't put any guardrails, it will make stuff up, which you don't want it to do. And it can kind of go off the rails a little bit. So it's really understanding what they can do and how to put those guidelines in place, and you can avoid all of that. And if anything, your PR is going to be what amazing service this company's offering, and that's the kind of PR you want.
Absolutely. Okay. Another one is AI isn't safe with my data.
Yeah, so that's like saying computers aren't safe with your data, or phones aren't safe with your data. It really comes down to what's the back end. Do you have sort of industry level security standards in place? And then because you're having a conversation with these models, is you don't have to feed it the entire chunk of information. You always want to control your data and only provide what's needed into these platforms, and branch out and leave them and come back to them if you have to do like payment processing or anything like that. So it just comes down to best practices. But like we're going to see here a business shortly that is probably very concerned with security, and they're taking advantage of it. So it's just about doing it right and always keeping that at top of mind.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at a common chatbot.
Perfect.
Okay, this is Wayfair, and they offer, first of all, an amazing company and not a client. But I'm a customer and I'm interacting. First, they offer every option for customer service on earth. But what you see here is quickly the chatbot says, oh, if you want to talk about reordering, call us. So I think that's an example. We don't know, by the way, if that's generative AI or it's just mimicking and behaving like a standard chatbot. So here's just a great example of a really great company. They offer articles, all kinds of access to customer service. And by the way, their customer service team is phenomenal. But here's an example of how much more could be done with generative AI chatbot, or like what you were just saying, Jeff, the misconceptions, the actual implementation and use of it. I'm going to guess because of the speed, it's not slow, but it's not wicked fast like generative AI. So we're making a guess here. And either way, we're just saying there's so much more that can be done, and it can offer a better experience. It can be more efficient. It can not create that loop that is annoying. So I'm chatting and it's telling me to call, and it's not, I didn't ask something very complicated. And so I think we're going to show you some great examples on the other side too.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to note is if you develop even if you're using some of this generative AI stuff, but if you're just doing it the way you've always done it, it can do a lot of that stuff, and it doesn't really add to the value. You're not taking advantage of the tool, and that might be what they're doing here. Is they've just implemented that and turned that on. But yeah, like, sticking within the channel, you want to do that. You don't want to create essentially two channels for this interaction now by giving a phone number.
Yeah.
And I think really mapping out that journey and understanding what your customers want. Like I don't know why they wouldn't have that as an offering. All right. So poor experiences with a chatbot. So one of the things that leads to frustration, and we see it all the time, is overly generic. And this is because you have to, in the traditional way, build out all the flows and understand what people are going to do. And if you've got a business that just does order status and maybe returns, that's easy. But as your business gets complicated, or you have a lot of policies and procedures or various troubleshooting you're trying to do, these just are really frustrating. And so that's one of the things that conversational AI can really get around because it doesn't have to be generic anymore, and you literally can have a small development window to put that out there, and it comes all down to content, and that's where the big shift is from technical resources to content. And then I think I mentioned it before, lack of empathy and understanding. If you're hard coding messages and just sort of think of a flow design, that's really hard to do, to understand where to put that in there and create that. So it ends up being sort of these cold generic messages because you're just going from point A to point B. And again, generative AI is so good at understanding the context of what you're saying. And it really elevates that from this poor experience. This is a repeat one. We see it all the time. We've talked about it a couple of times here already. No human escalation. If you're going to offer customer support and you can't solve everything through self-service, you do need humans. And so recognizing when to do that and how to best take advantage of that, even if your budgets are limited, you can take advantage of a lot of the technology out there now to automate away most of those interactions and then save those gems for your agents.
And not to interrupt, but of course
Yeah.
I am. You also can escalate too quickly, right? What we just saw. So it's like, I think you just said something like it is all about content. I would say content and someone that knows what the customer experience should be or what you want it to be for the brand, for your customers. Because
No, I think for sure understanding that balance, and I think we saw that initially with generative AI, where people, because they didn't like the idea of being trapped in chatbots, they were like, if you say agent once, I'm out of here. You're going to get to an agent. Well, there is that mindset of like, oh, a bot, I don't want to chat with it. But you have to have a confidence too in the product that you have and that you've built, because that, if you like, just even to have a person go down those couple steps, those sort of biases will go away. But don't trap them, of course, once they're down the path. But escalating too early is totally a problem, because now you're paying for all your agents and paying for a platform that you're not taking advantage of. So yeah, and then PR nightmares and misinterpretation. Again, this is where sort of unchecked generative AI could lead to a poor experience and to something that sort of is not how you intended. This just comes down to understanding how they work and tweaking and iterating and always evaluating those conversations and making sure that everything is accurate, that the tone is there, that the flow is happening naturally, and so forth. And then security and privacy risks. Nobody wants to chat with your bot if they don't trust it. They're not going to give you their information if they've read about you in the news about a breach or anything like that. So really making sure that you set that level of trust with your customers, and that's through all parts of your business, but especially with the chatbots, you want to make sure you're being tight with that data. You don't even have to ask for the person's name or email address if they're just looking for help. That's one of the things that some of our clients do, is they only ask for that information if you're escalating. So understand what are the reasons for the data collection that you're doing, and maybe the bot doesn't need any of it. Okay, so we want to showcase an example of one of the bots of one of our clients, just because we do feel like this is the good, bad, and the ugly. We feel this is the good. So we had a client here that was experiencing volume from their growth, and with more volume equals more customer support. And so how do you deal with that increased demand? Also having spikes. spikes throughout the day. Like a lot of people are calling, they have babies, they're with new children. And so that volume is all over the place. It's hard to predict. So how do you handle those spikes? And then 24 hours, might be 4 a.m, you might have a technical question that you need to deal with because you're up. Well, that's pretty expensive to do and hard to staff for 24 hours. And then they're a global product. So having languages, being able to support that, and a sensitive customer base, because they're going to be tired. These are new parents. They are going to be maybe a little sleep deprived, a little frustrated because it's technology and in the middle of the night. And so we really wanted to make sure that we worked with the client to address all of these sort of issues that they were having, and give them an experience that would allow them to grow, allow the team to be able to handle those interactions, keep people out of queue, and do all of that with the right balance, making sure that the customers are happy and they're getting the support that they need. So we've got a little demo here that we'll showcase, and this is going to be a mixture of old and new. So with conversational AI, you are not restricted to just doing that. And I think sometimes people think that if I'm holding my baby and I'm just like selecting my product and doing certain things, giving me buttons, just let me tap through a couple of things and then let me get into the meat of the issue. And so you'll see that here. So we'll go ahead and show the demo.
I think that's important, Jeff. So it's a combination.
Yeah, I think that is really key. And that's the balance we always try to strike. So out of the gate, a lot of times you'll see with the bots that we build, we say, okay, we sort of think of it like a department. Which way do you want to go? Because we do a lot of the generative stuff in a modular way so that they're really tailored to the task at hand. And so we try to set expectation up front. We inform people of the customer service hours so that they know that they can get escalated if they're chatting. And if the case of troubleshooting, that do they have their device on hand? Because if they're not home or maybe the baby's sleeping, they can't really troubleshoot it right now. So you're not really helping them. So it's that balance. So this goes through an example of troubleshooting here. Okay, so here's a matter of, okay, we just want to say, okay, I've got access to my device, and we're trying to get responses back from people, and we remember their product, we remember their name, so we have some information there, so they're not putting it in the same time over and over again, and this is just sort of best practices overall. And then we get into the conversation here. So I think this is where you start seeing some of the superpowers. So these are flows that right from here on in, we've done define these or build these out. This is just it having conversation with a ton of knowledge that we fed into that from all of their manuals and a lot of the great support articles that they have. And you'll see here, like, I have a silly question. No question is silly. Like, this is not something that we plan. This is something we've seen people type in. And it's pretty remarkable that they're able to do that. And it's got unlimited patience. It's sitting there. The person's typing with one hand because they're holding the baby with the other and typing away. And it'll just sit there and wait and collect that information and give them a response. And so it tries to remember, here we got a replacement. Let me guide you through the setup process. And now it's going to go out and try to find all the information that's specific to this product, specific to this particular step, and give the person all the steps, as well as link them out to more information. Maybe they want to watch a video or go through something else. And then we want to know the biggest thing and the hardest thing to sometimes get people to do is to let us know, like, did that work? Because maybe the troubleshooting steps need to be tweaked and all of that. So here you say, okay, they're going to try it. So then it's like, okay, well, let me know, because I want to know if this worked. And so in this example here, we see this a lot with this particular client, is people they're dealing with their babies, right? And so they maybe had a moment, but babies don't respect moments. And so the baby starts crying, or you waking up early, and yeah, no problem at all. I'm just going to wait here. There's a wait here all day. I don't want to put you guys through a demo of going through all day here. So we'll just say, okay, we're back. And again, it still has context. It still has memory. Okay. Yeah. Did those steps work for you? Like, is your issue solved? And yep, sure enough, these steps are great. Thank you so much. And of course, we give a response, and then we queue it over to a CSAT where we try to rate that conversation. So I think it's pretty remarkable. The whole last minute and a half of that conversation, you don't have to build out that flow. You don't have to understand that, other than understanding your products and what solutions fix them. Everything else is handled by the bot, giving it a personality and all of that, which is pretty remarkable.
Remarkable is the word. And I would just say we use the word generative, but I would call it dynamic. Like, instead of it, the old bots would follow keywords and offer articles, or did this answer your question? First of all, they were slow. So it
Yeah.
just is very telling that we as humans are very eager to just get our problems solved, babies or not, right? Of course, new parents get the award for the need of information when they need it, and that could be 4 a.m. as you said. So I just think if this is the beginning, holy cow, where are we headed?
Yeah, holy cow. I remember being amazed when we had first intent detection, which I think is what you were talking about, right? So the first was like there's nothing and then there's intent. But that is tricky, especially with multiple languages and especially with anticipating how people are going to phrase things. And then that just blows us all out of the water. It's exponentially better. And like we do a lot of QA on these chats, and I just come across sometimes I'm just still blows my mind away. And we're like, we built the thing, and I'm just like, this thing is just rocking it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I think you can also lean into it over time. So if there's a lack of comfort and you keep escalating to humans, I think over time when you start to lean in a little bit more, you'll find your customers, for the most part, if it's answering what they're seeking, they're
Yep.
going to embrace it, right? So that may seem
Yeah,
like common
1,000%. I think,
sense.
and treat it like an agent. Like if you had an agent that was always escalating, like, "Hey, how's it going? Okay, let me get someone for you." You'd be like, "Wait a second here. Let me do some retraining on that agent and give them some empower them to solve some more things." If you look at these conversational AI as fellow agents, that your mindset will shift.
Well, we're seeing like kind of crazy results with the clients we have. And, we come from the people side of the business. So knowing a lot of the answers that bot, by the way, answered and for our other clients as well, came from the very customer service professionals that have been handling customer issues and product issues forever. So it's a happy marriage of both. You still need lovely people when it's necessary. And I think here is a case study with Bank of America, and they're not a client. I think it's just a well-known and well-documented success story about their customer service, customer experience chatbot called Erica. And I think just because one, it's banking, financial services, that it has had mass adoption and engagement. That alone is just a success story. It's fast. I mean, wicked fast, accurate, personalized. Of course, it's created a ton of efficiencies, and it operates like it's got a human-like kind of persona. I understand it will wish you a happy birthday and even tell some jokes. That's just maybe a bad rumor. That's what I've heard. Again, I'm not, they're not a client and I'm not a customer, but I think just the idea of a large institution using this and having such great success just tells us all like this is where we're headed, whether we're all sort of cautious about stepping forward or not. This is just a reality of the future. So
And I think an important point too is for people who are concerned about like, oh well, or the concern of like PR or security of any type of thing is like this is Bank of America. So if they've embraced it, you know it's being vetted and validated that this is the future.
exactly.
All right, the bad. There's many ways that this can miss the marks, and I think this applies to generative AI as well as traditional AI. But one of the biggest things is lack of understanding, and I think the old AI, the issue was like just intent detection and all of that. It worked okay. It was kind of good, but the generative models can do amazing things right now, but they need to understand your product, your business, whatever it is that you're answering. And so if it doesn't have that information, it's also going to have issues understanding the people's requests. And so it's really making sure that you have that scripted replies. Again, there's a time and a place for them. And if you're just, again, doing some product selection or doing various parts of your flow, take advantage of those. Those are great to really get specific direction of what someone wants, but not on the whole conversation. And it's really hard because there's no context there. There's no conversation. Lack of empathy is the same thing with scripting. Like you're going to it's very hard to do that sounds natural and sincere in a scripted reply. Poor escalation, that is the worst of the worst. That leads to um, an ugly we're going to talk about here. But yeah, poor escalation. It's really making sure that handoff is natural. This too on your agent side. If you've never had a bot before and you suddenly have deployed one, make sure that they understand what the bot's doing, because they want to know what those steps have already been taken, or what information was already collected. No one wants to have the bot ask a bunch of questions and then get to an agent and have them ask the same questions. And then over reliance, I think this is the big thing, is like, oh, well, that'll save all of our problems, let's get rid of our customer service department and call it a day. You can't rely on that fully. There's amazing stuff that's doing. We're preaching the preach here, but you can't. You have to recognize that their human touch is still needed, and you still need people to handle those complex interactions, those VIP clients, those particular use cases, or sensitive issues, that kind of thing. And then the ugly. So yes, the ugly security concerns. Of course, no one wants to have a breach or have a chatbot read you back your credit card numbers, that kind of thing. Wrong answers. This is definitely where we talked about in other of these conversations as well. The quality of your knowledge is huge, and the specific direction around that, and doing sort of these little tailored language models, which is the approach we do, just to make sure that those answers are accurate, and a lot of QA around that. So if you're just giving out wrong answers, it doesn't matter that you're chatting with 1,000 people a second. If it's all wrong, it's all wrong, and it's just going to lead to terrible experiences and upset customers. Loop conversations. This is really comes down to doing a lot of testing. Like this happens in all the platforms out there. You really just making sure that when you make a change that you're not doing that, or more importantly, you're not doing it intentionally. That's the worst. Just help people when they need help, I think is a key part of all of this. And giving someone an escape route. Like you may say, okay, well, we only escalate if we need to have this information. But just make that clear. Like just say, hey, listen, we'll get you somebody. Don't worry. We just need to collect this information first. And then bot rage. And this is what I was talking about before. All of these things, all of the bad and definitely the ugly. It's if you've ever listened to call recordings and IVRs and someone just yelling, agent, 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 it's the equivalent on their keyboard. It's all caps. Give me an agent. You don't want that. That's not really good service. It doesn't take years in the business to know that, but it's one of those things that you can control that experience a lot. And yeah, you're going to have to upset people, but there's a lot you can do to make it nice, make it natural, make it empathetic, and let people know what's going on. And I think that if you can avoid having bot rage, or taking people who've maybe had bot rage and they're really biased against bots, and bringing them back over to the other side, that's wonderful.
Well, that is ugly. And now you just started to stir some fear that starts to happen with an implementation. But I think what we didn't talk about, metrics, we have in other of our webinars, but being able to measure CSAT and keep a pulse on monitoring what your customers think of their experience, and then sort of, I keep saying lean into it, but lean into it in a way that's aligned with what their expectations. The easier you make it for your customers, obviously the more adoption they will have. So in terms of the good, and then we'll go to some quick questions, providing, we've talked about easy access to humans when needed. That is a big deal. I would call it just, who's helping to map that out, and just, it needs to be logical. There's a lot of contingencies we've talked about in other webinars about, different internally in organizations, whether it's a finance team expecting savings, or you've got a marketing team that is worried about, the brand voice. And then you've got an ops team that's like, we can't automate that, so there's just so many parties that get involved in this. They just kind of have to bring it all together and have a team that really is clear on what you want that brand experience overall and customer experience to be. Timely and clear responses. It's just lovely. I would say, it's just consistent. So, we love humans more than I think the average organization, because we are human centric. We even say we're more human, which is pretty funny. But the idea that you're giving clear responses and it has this interpretation, because on scale, a robot is understanding the intent quicker, I think, than maybe you have somebody that's new. And anyway, I think that's something that's can really drive a positive customer experience. The empathy, Jeff, you talked about that. It can be sincere, which is nice, and I think we're learning that that is true. Personalized is a big deal. I think even in this scenario you showed where a person came back and it picked right back up. It knows what product was purchased. It knows what they've tried. It's not going to start over from scratch. And that's just a huge win, I think, in terms of a positive customer experience. Consistent across channels is the same, right? So that, they're getting the same information regardless of how they've come to interact with the brand. And then, using it to escalate when appropriate is just, a huge win, because one of the studies when we were looking at the trend that we talked about at the beginning is that now 70 to 80% of sort of routine inquiries can be solved by a generative chatbot. So if you go into it knowing, okay, that is a fact, so it's okay to start slower, but then this is where we're headed, and that's where we are right now. Imagine where this is all headed.
Yeah, and we're seeing those numbers too with our clients.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of mind blowing. So with that,
the important thing to do is just get in there and try it. You may be the person that initially that's escalating, like we said, not to right away because you're trying to figure it out, but have those goals and have that mapped out of what you're targeting there. And as long as you have the answers, which if you've been training agents to do this, you should have the answers. It can take a lot of that volume away without sacrificing customer service and just overall delight.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time. We'll be very quick. This is kind of a straightforward question, Jeff. How long did it take to implement the chatbot from start to finish? And I don't think there's any finish, I'll just say, but I'll...
Like, ask me in a couple of years, we'll let you know when we're finished.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that to get up and running right out of the gate, like we had certain metrics depending on the clients that we're talking about here that we needed to meet, right? One, we were taking over for another sort of bot company that they had, and we basically had a very tight timeline on that. And so we were looking at like 4 to 6 weeks there to really hammer that out. And I think those timelines are realistic, depending on the size of business that you have. We help a lot of our clients with their knowledge. And so if there's a lot of knowledge refinement that needs to go into that, that can add to the timeline. But I would say we've seen like the old chatbots would take months to deploy for a complex interaction, and this one you can do in like under 6 weeks if you had a team of people really dedicated to that. So it's pretty amazing.
Okay, here's a question from Dylan. What are your thoughts on health insurance companies like CareFirst implementing their version of a chatbot to member experience in context of balancing the personal emotional side of members' health with claims, denial, approval, adjudication being such a sensitive subject? I mean, yeah. I would just, you share your thoughts and I'll share mine.
Yeah, no, I think that again, I think the big important thing is mapping out, okay, what is sensitive there, right? So what information are you going to collect? Is this a generative bot that you've deployed on site? Do you have a partner? What are their compliance, right? In this case, would it be HIPAA compliant? Is that a requirement for you and your business? And like one thing that's amazing with this conversational AI is they never really have a bad day, or they're going to always have that sort of tone that you describe to that. And so it can really be helpful to people. I've seen people in the news have had relationships with these bots because they get so attached to them. I think that handling sensitive issues with customers and showing that empathy is where they could be super powered. I think too, if we're talking about things like denial and approval, decisions, like AI can do that. I think that's a bigger conversation to talk about, sort of where that may be justified and maybe not. I think you'd want oversight over that kind of a thing. It is powerful and it can do a lot of things. I think that'd be one that it would take a lot of examination, but I wouldn't shy away from it if I was in that industry. I would absolutely embrace that, at least as like sort of a frontline agent to collect that information, to understand what the person's looking for. If they've got questions about a claim, all of that information is in there. So it doesn't have to be black or white, right? So this could be like, imagine if all of your calls or chats were like 10 minutes long and you had an amazing volume, which they might have. If you could get a bot to handle like the first 8 minutes of that volume, those questions, those answers, and then have a human handle the last couple of minutes, that's a nice balance there. And so you can really strike that without knowing the situations in that business. I would fully embrace that. You just have to have people who know compliance and know the customers and know the business be part of that journey. And one of our previous talks, we talked about all the key players when you do a deployment like this, and that would be one you'd want to have on hand.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents is there's so much within the health industry. Even if you look at prescription refills, that could easily be automated with all kinds of rules around it that are, not getting at the mental health aspect of what is happening. But if there are rules around prescription refills, as opposed to the archaic system now where you go in and you probably go into a platform and you hit, I'd like to refill this. And they get to it in like, and it could just be for an eye infection or something ridiculous. And I think about like doctor on demand, like, again, not a client, but it's all sort of fixed intake and it does hand off to a human, but all of that could be a lot faster. It's like, okay, here's a fixed, not dynamic situation where it could, I just think about my own experience with those where they're asking a ton of very, probably what could be dynamic intake questions that don't cross too far of a line. I mean, that's my opinion.
No, I think that's 1,000%. I think that's a perfect example where humans and generative AI can work hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And these bots can also do a lot of things on the back end. So you think if you have agents and they're creating documentation for various things, these platforms can do that. And that's pretty incredible. And it gets consistency. So if anything, where maybe you have agents that sometimes fill out this field, but don't do this one, or there's nuance there, this is very consistent and very helpful. And I think, looking at those use cases, and maybe there's only a segment of your business that you were willing to trust or do that with that now, I'd say go for it. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, Jeff, one last question. How did you measure success beyond CSAT? That's interesting because we've struggled to get people to even give that feedback. We get it, but anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. Like, I know, like some of our clients, like the one we demoed there, people are using an app, so they're going back and forth, and people tend not to. They tend to be a little ruder to bots. You'll see it with the Googles and the Alexas out there. There's not a lot of people that don't say thank you, that kind of thing. Well, you're going to find that with your generative bots, and you're going to find that people maybe aren't going to say like that. That's great. That's awesome. You're the best. Where they might say that to an agent, and so. Measuring success from CSAT, especially if it's a bot-only conversation, you may find a low response rate. There's a lot of tools, and we're doing a lot of work right now on looking at conversations and doing more of a predictive CSAT, using these language models to act as the customer. There's really interesting stuff that's being developed around that. And I think too, like, what was the reason you did it in the first place, right? Is it because you couldn't handle the volume? Well, are you handling the volume now? So that might be a marker for that. Or was your goal just to offer 24/7 service or expand to the other languages? So you really, when you start down this journey, I think understanding your goals and what everyone's metrics that they want to achieve are, and then getting all the sort of the key players involved and aligned to those metrics. So success can just be automation and resolution rate. Like, you want to reduce your costs a little bit or handle that growth. It could be we just want to increase our CSAT, and we want to try and use AI to do that. It's up to you, really, and you as a business.
It's endless. I think a future topic should definitely be around quality and the customer experience. I mean, this is what we do. So when we sit around as an executive team and still listen to calls, we as humans debate whether it was a great experience or not, just based on our own personal opinions. Like some people like it to be fast and efficient. Some people like it to be kind and thoughtful. And so I think that's going to get very interesting. So,
well, and it's a good point. And that's, I think, one thing where actually generative AI is really good in these conversational AIs is they can go both directions. You don't have to choose, right? If I can pick up that I'm just looking for quick stuff, or maybe I've got something I said in my profile, I want like 1-word answers. Let's go. Whereas someone would be like, oh, I've got a half an hour, let's have a chat. And so you have both of those options.
well, thank you, Jeff. As always, it's a pleasure. We could just do this all day long. So we want to be
yes.
Considerate of everybody's time, and thank everybody again for joining us. We do this about once a month. So our next one will be coming up in a few weeks, and we'll be sure to seek your feedback on topics that you'd like to hear more about. And as always, Jeff, you're the guru. I'm grateful for your time and your wisdom and your experience that you shared today. So thank you.
You're welcome. Grateful to be here. I'm happy to always talk about this stuff. It's such an exciting time. And to anyone who's joined here, especially if you're watching a recording after the fact, if you have any questions, we're an open book for this stuff. So just reach out. We'll have a chat, and we'll talk through some of your challenges and see what we can do to help.
Yes, great one. Thank you, Jeff, for offering that. And thanks everybody again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.